Well, welcome everybody to another episode. I'm here with Colleen.
Hi, everyone.
The majority of our listenership is actually audio only, so we can't just wave. You have to actually say hi. And we're here today with an amazing guest, Natalie Dyer, PhD. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Robin. Hi, Colleen. It's great to be here.
And we're excited to have Natalie today because we are going to be talking about Reiki research, as I'm sure among other things that the conversation will lead us. And so we're just really excited to have you today.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll go ahead and read your bio and then we'll get into your story. Dr. Natalie Dyer, PhD, is a research scientist with Connor Whole Health at University Hospitals, University of California, Irvine, and president of the Center for Reiki Research. Natalie completed her Bachelor of Science from the University of Toronto, doctorate in neuroscience at Queen's University, and postdoc fellowships in psychology and integrative medicine at Harvard and Harvard Medical School. She has published many scientific papers and book chapters on postmaterialist science, psychedelics, and therapeutic effects of integrative medicine practices, including Reiki, yoga, acupuncture, and mindfulness, and is co-editor of the book Expanding Science, Visions of Postmaterialist Paradigm, and the forthcoming book Infinite Perceptions, The Power of Psychedelics for Global Transformation. Natalie has also been a Reiki master since 2016 and a dedicated yogi for the past 16 years. Her passion is understanding and addressing mental and physical health from a psycho-spiritual perspective, and lives in the woods on the east coast of Canada with her husband, artist Louis Dyer, and their daughter. You can find her at drnataliedyer.com. Her email, I'm sure you can find on your website as well, rather than trying to spell all that out. Yeah. Okay. And then her Instagram is dr.natalie.dyer. And Natalie is spelled Natalie, and Dyer is Dyer. And of course, as usual, all those links will be in the description, show notes, all of those things. So if you don't catch it right now, just go look there and you can find her. All right. So welcome, Natalie. As I said, we're excited to have you. And I have to know, where did your journey start? Because a lot of times those two things don't always sync up. And so we're excited to hear about that in this bridge between the two worlds.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It's great to meet you and connect. My story. So starts when I was born. No, starts before I was born.
Starts at creation. Right. We don't quite have time for that.
No, let's try to keep it short.
Yeah.
So I was a sensitive child, like a lot of people, a little odd, I thought a little differently, thought about meaning at a really young age, questioned a lot of things. My parents were very emotionally dysregulated, we'll say, or my mom and stepdad. So I experienced divorce at 3.5, felt all the emotions around that, my mom's pain and the depression of that. And then my mom remarried to someone who was very volatile and very, very much not like my biological dad, kind of like went the opposite. So there was a lot of emotion in the house. There was a lot of, like I said, emotional dysregulation, a lot of abuse, really. And, a lot of people have had it worse, but it was a tough childhood. And that caused me to question a lot. I felt very much, what is the purpose of this? What's going on with them? And there's got to be something bigger. And I had a lot of alone time because they had their issues they were dealing with, they were fighting, whatever. So I spent a lot of time alone. And maybe because I think this happens for a lot of people, if you can't really rely maybe on your family or anyone in your life, you look to God or spirit or, something greater. So in the quiet of my bedroom a lot, I just connected with God, higher power. I was in a Catholic school at the time, so a little bit of Jesus, Mother Mary, but not strict religious upbringing. And I felt like my home was kind of elsewhere. Maybe I had a purpose for being here. And I just felt that connection, that deep connection, and that built resilience in me. And it also made me question reality, made me question what is truth? Why am I here? What can I do with this suffering? How can I relieve suffering? Because I saw my mother suffer so much. She's now passed. And so my mission kind of became to understand reality and understand how I can maybe help people reconnect the way that I felt like I was connecting. And part of that journey of truth, through education led me into the sciences. And I was kind of I was naively expecting that to be a comprehensive understanding of truth. So I went into biology, and I was really into the study of life and the mind, and very quickly realized that the experiences that I had, which were things like out-of-body experiences at a young age, psychic dreams, these kinds of things that a lot of people have, that they were just pseudoscience. They were nothing. They were fantasy. They didn't exist. And so that was very disappointing. But I continued to believe in my experience, and I had evidence. If I had a psychic dream, a lot of them were proven. So it would be very minor things like what my mom picked up at the grocery store while I was sleeping, like random stuff. And I'd be like, wow, she's never got that before. And I dreamt she got that. And wow, that's pretty cool. And so I kept that faith, which I believe was kind of more than faith. I felt like it was a knowing, while still learning all of the sciences. And then at some point, I think during teenagehood, when I was kind of in a rebellious stage, maybe I thought of myself as like an atheist for a bit there. And but then I wanted proof. So I started getting into more like new agey practices. And things happened. So my experience was validated over and over again. And then I continued to be really interested in the mind and biology, and decided to do a PhD in neuroscience, because that's kind of the bridge between the two, biology and psychology. And very early in that first year of my PhD, I realized I could blend these two parts of myself. They don't have to be separate. And I saw Mario Beauregard, his book called The Spiritual Brain. And it was just like the day that it was all like synchronistic. Like I kind of thought, I can scientifically study this stuff. And then I saw that book in the window, and I was like, wow. And it all kind of clicked. And I was still in my first year of my PhD doing pharmacological kind of research. So looking at, excuse me, the pharmacology and the anatomy of anxiety regulation and fear using animal models. And it was very materialist kind of work. But I thought, I can't stay in this. I got to shift my research when I'm done. I had a very supportive advisor who also had a very deep, innate spirituality. She practiced yoga as well. And so she was very supportive of that. But I continued in my research. And so that was like 4 or 5 years of like doing the work to get the degree so that I could then hopefully study what I really wanted to. And when I was done my PhD, it was my advisor actually who found a job posting at Harvard. And she's like, you might as well try. And I was like, Harvard, oh my goodness. So I applied and I got hired to do my postdoc at Harvard in Ellen Langer's mindfulness lab. And that was a really amazing opportunity. And she has incredible work. If you're familiar, if not, I would encourage you to look into her. She very much studies how the mind-body link. So she thinks it's mind-body unity. She calls it the same thing. Wherever you put the mind, you put the body, is what she would say. So we did really cool experiments with things like manipulating people's time perception. So if they think, so we did a sleep study, for example, very briefly, where if we manipulated clocks, so people slept maybe 8 hours and thought they slept 5 hours, or they slept 5 hours and thought they slept 8 hours. And what we saw was their reaction time, their cognitive ability, and even their brain activity followed what they thought they slept rather than like actual time. And there's been other studies with that, with blood glucose level and even wound healing. So really cool studies like that. And nothing quite like spiritual related, but very much really interesting studies like nocebo effects, placebo effects, and really cool stuff like that. But I wanted to do maybe some spiritual research. And so then I did a second postdoc at Harvard, and that's when I was at Harvard Medical School, and that was in yoga research. So I started doing research on yoga for stressed populations. And during this time, I guess I could go back to when I was taking Reiki training, which was during the first year of my PhD. My teacher, Dave Best, he said, "Oh, you're a scientist, you're a researcher, you should learn about the Center for Reiki Research." So I joined their mailing list. And during that first year of my postdoc, I got an email. Everyone got an email saying, "We're looking for a researcher to conduct a large scale study." And I just jumped on that opportunity. So that was like 2014. So I started doing a study with them through Harvard. And Ellen Langer was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. Do whatever you want." She was pretty great like that. And so I started doing some Reiki research with them. And ever since then, I've been doing, all my research has been around integrative medicine, Reiki, yoga, mindfulness, and mostly around psychological health, but also some physical health research as well. And I think that's a summary that hopefully covered everything.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like, how this path has been for you, because you have on kind of both sides of the spectrum, I think. You have the academic world that can have some kind of pushback. You also can have the spiritual world that can also have some pushback in between the two things. So I'm just wondering, how has that journey been for you in navigating that? And, I'd like to hear your own perspective, because I'm wondering if it's like, well, how can other people, navigate that space? But I almost think that just by hearing your journey and your space with that it would be helpful to hear about that for others and you too.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I usually get asked the side of, how do the scientists feel about what you do? But it's interesting that you brought up, how does the spiritual side, and it's true, because there was one Reiki practitioner who was kind of mad that I was doing research. Like, we don't need to do research. We know it works. And it's like, well, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help.
Just trying to help.
Just trying to help. So yeah, there has been a little bit of pushback, but earlier on. So during my PhD, when I started really kind of awakening to the fact that I could do all of this, and really getting deeper in my practices, and saying, "Oh, I want to do meditation research." And, one of my colleagues said, "That's ridiculous. Don't do that. That's pseudoscience." And which is, if I spoke to him now, I'm sure he'd be like, "Well, that was kind of stupid of me." Because, like, how big is, mindfulness research now, and how mainstream is it? How it's a state of consciousness, of course you can study that. And it's not, anything you study scientifically is not pseudoscience, first of all. Hello. So that's a phrase that people use. It's a very cheap phrase to use to just, shut you up. And, Wikipedia is great at that. If you go look up Reiki or anything, it's pseudoscience. So so there was some pushback there. I always feel like it's been divinely guided, in a sense that my advisors have always been, the fact that my PhD advisor in like a pharmacological model was just like, "Oh," and when I told her I started doing Reiki, she was like, "Oh, you're such a healer." And I was like, whoa, like, thank you. And her son is very much into the same kind of stuff. So that probably helped as well. But I have been very supportive. And I think it helps that I'm pretty sure about things. Like I said, that deep connection from a young age. I don't question what I'm doing myself, very rarely. I'm open to, running a study and it shows no effect, and saying like, okay, well, let's see what's really going on here. Maybe it is placebo, but what is placebo, right? Let's dig into that some more. And so I'm very much open-minded, but I'm also somehow immune to other people's opinion in a lot of ways. But I don't think I was always that way. Side note, had some past life regression at some point where I was, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but was executed for having an opinion, going against the Protestant Revolution in Germany in 1550 for whatever reason. So cut my head off. And when I had that experience and I had the healing that was a part of the past life journey, that went away, because I really did feel like up until that point that there were people somewhere just judging me and hating me. And my mom was there with me, and I was like crying. She's like, "You've always felt that way. Like people hate you." And I'm like, "I know." And then ever since then, I don't care. I'm really interested in this. I'm really excited by it. And I've met so many people that feel the same way, that it's like the support is there. And like I said, Mario Beauregard, he's been like an unofficial mentor of mine. And then there's been so many other people that I've connected with, Larry Dossie. I mean, there's so many of us. And I think like finally with the internet and Zoom and all of this, we're able to build a strong network. The scientific and medical network, for example, they've been around 50 years, but there's so many amazing scientists and academics as part of that. And all feeling that same connection, that same understanding. And maybe we have different opinions on the details. That doesn't matter. We're in it for truth, and we're in it for universal love. And so I do feel like it's sort of a divinely guided mission of sorts, without sounding super mission-y. Just, sometimes I'm like, maybe just relax and enjoy life. You don't have to like, change the world. But it's been really great. And sometimes, I do a podcast or an interview, and I see a YouTube comment, and I'm like, oh, like, because they'll insult, oh, this person doesn't know what she's talking about, or whatever, whatever it is. And yeah, it does get under my skin. It's like, oh, okay, well, I gotta let that go. Let it go. So I think earlier on it was tough. Once I got to Harvard, everyone was so open-minded, and it was incredible when I said I was a Reiki master. Oh, I love Reiki. These are PhD students, MDs, and it's pretty amazing how many people they just don't speak about it until you do. So when you're open and you're just honest, it's amazing how many people are like, oh, I do Reiki too, but I don't tell anyone.
Interesting.
So true. Well, I do think that part of our role at this time in history is that we are bringing these skills and abilities and the true, authentic intellect of being human back. And these are not new ways, these are ancient ways that we are bringing into today's world. And in my life, I started with all of this in 1997. And like you, really as a child, growing up and looking back now with all of those same perceptions and kind of a similar Catholic upbringing too. But I remember when I first started with all of these practices, first of all, dealing with some of the challenges of everybody's opinions. And then also in the Reiki community, people talking about we have to make it mainstream. And one day I thought, I think we are the mainstream.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty mainstream when it really comes down to it. Maybe I have some different ways of thinking of things than some people have, but over time, certainly the results and the evidence of the results, both from the average person experiencing how Reiki, shamanic work, the energy medicines, so many of the traditions, bringing back that ancient knowledge, and then making it current. So merging the two. And I do think the same thing happened for science, because sciences were also pseudoscience for a long time back
medicine
in the day.
Too. Yes. Like integrative medicine now, that was the norm until 1914 or something. All the medical schools, they taught integrative medicine. And then there was a report released that, insulted it all and said, if you're teaching this stuff like homeopathy or osteopathy, that you got to shut down. And they shut down something like 60% of medical schools in the United States. So we think of this as new. And just like you said, we're just bringing it back. And maybe we're bringing it back in a more integrated way, maybe a more grounded way, maybe, we can now scientifically study these things and provide some evidence for it. And I think it's a very exciting time. And just even from when I was doing my doctorate to now, the difference in people's perception is huge.
Yeah, I would say almost always now, if I say, oh, I'm a Reiki practitioner or teacher, most people have at least heard of it.
Yes. Yep. Before it's like, what is that?
Yeah, it has a good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's great.
Yeah.
Do you think that a part of this, and this is, I know, going to potentially be a separate conversation, but do you think a part of this is also like the role of psychedelics and plant medicine being able to actually study, where this is traveling, as opposed to an energetic piece of it, which you can't always measure that, at least in our current system? Do you think that it being accepted, it becoming more popular is also helping some of these, integrative things as well, that you can't necessarily measure in such a straightforward way?
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. They're all kind of helping each other. So the way I see it is maybe psychotherapy, and then we have mindfulness, and then mindfulness allows for more meditation because it's a type of meditation. Then we have yoga on the tail end of that. And then we have Reiki, but then we have plant medicine coming back. And that's really opening people that have experienced that, opens them to the energy, to the love, it's all love, it's all one, so then that leads them to be open to biofield therapies, or whatever you want to call them, energy healing. And it's all kind of feeding back on each other. And as long as it's done in a balanced way, hopefully there are no incidents with the psychedelics. Hopefully they're done properly. But we do see those doors opening up. And I like this quote that, people say, as I think it's David Luke that said this, but I could be wrong. So that psychedelics can turn an atheist to a believer in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So they're very, very,
you being in academia, I'm sure, see that quite a bit.
Yes. So they're very powerful tools for that. And so hopefully, I think, talk later, do have a book coming out, and it's all around this, that it's a transformative, psychedelics are transformative on a global scale, personal level, cultural level, globally. And I think we're just at the beginning of seeing what that's going to lead to. And hopefully it's a beautiful thing, because, the vast majority of people that experience it in a proper setting, in a proper way, do experience, if they can let go and go with the experience. They have maybe that ego death, they have that unveiling, and they feel the connection, and they deeply understand the unity. And so when you have an experience like that, you're not going to be a violent person. You're going to, or at least you're going to seek to, change your behavior. You see what you've been maybe programmed into, the behaviors and beliefs that are out of balance with that truth. So I think it's a really exciting time. But at the same time, we see kind of like this split where we have like the spiritual narcissism happening, and we, a lot with the social media, and we have the artificial intelligence stuff happening, and the transhumanism, and so it's very interesting to see what's going to happen. It's like kind of like I see like society is really like kind of splitting in these two very different directions. One of them is concerning. One of them is wonderful. And I don't know what's going to happen, but for a while there, I thought, oh, this great awakening's happening. And then we get this like social media, like just, I don't know. There's a lot of issues there. With obviously children being on devices too much, and lack of social connection, lack of community, these kinds of things. But at the same time, a lot of people seeking that and creating that. So it's very interesting what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you can see both sides. And then like just taking an example of Zoom, for example, like you were saying earlier that we're able to connect with more people around the world, which also we were talking before about the mycelium and that connection, and Colleen, a recent experience that you had. And that is like, that's kind of to me what Zoom looks like, right? Is this mycelium of all this network of people that can connect with each other from all over the world. And then the opposite end of that coin is like, or the other side of that coin is that then, what about, it's like a global community, but what about your local community? And, being connected to that, which is, it's a really interesting time frame, like you said, to kind of watch that as this all transpires. And it is a little bit of a surrender, because it's like, I don't know where it's going. And that sometimes is so hard,
And you can only control what you do, right? So,
exactly.
Personally, I work remotely. I work for a hospital system in Ohio, University of California, Center for Reiki Research. I'm in Canada. They're all in America. I'm on Zoom a lot, and I live in the sweetest little town. And it's only recently that, like, I do distant Reiki. Mostly I've been doing distant Reiki for a long time. And just recently, I'm like, no, I need to work here. I need to be part of the community. So I've got a studio space opening up in a couple of weeks. And I'm so happy to be able to do in person with my community. And so that's my way of trying to find that balance. It's like, where am I local? Like, I'm non-local. I'm like I need to get grounded. I need to embed in my community. I need to, connect here as well for my own health. So, and I know a lot of other researchers are feeling that too, since, the whole pandemic thing, a lot of people working remotely now. And I've been doing it a really long time. At first it's great. You're at home. Oh, it's so cozy. I love being home. But then after a while, it can be very isolating, even if you're Zooming with people all day. There's something really about being in person, having that connection face to face. So if each person is able to find that balance, then the whole will find that balance as well.
Where exactly are you?
I'm in Hampton, New Brunswick. So it's the east coast of Canada. It's about 2 hours from Maine.
Yeah, I've been there with Pam Allen LeBlanc. She's in New Brunswick, and I want to say Dunbar.
I don't even know where that is. I'm from Ontario originally.
Right name. I should know. I've been there.
But I moved out here almost 3 years ago now. So originally from outside of Toronto, Ontario. But it's, the people here are incredible. Very, they don't care what you do for a living, in Ontario, it's like, oh, Harvard, ooh. Here they're like, they don't care. Like, that's nice. It's like, are you a good person? Are you helping your community? Are you growing vegetables? Like, that the value system is totally different, but it's what I think is the right values. So it's been a real shakeup in a good way.
Well, watching it all from my age, and you guys are quite a bit younger and another generation, which I'm so excited about, being my age and observing the younger generation. Like I say, I think of us as a bridge. And starting back in my childhood, where we were so, everything was so definitely the outside authority, telling us what to believe, what we do. And we all just did that until really the 1968. Finally said, okay, we're gonna do something about this. But I really think that's why we are in the level of this wave right now, because there is the pushback from the dependence on the outside authority and the newness of the inner authority, the inner truth, the inner development, the inner expression. And so in my age group, I feel like what I can do is just be stable and supportive for these next generations coming through to develop these new ways that are possible and these new possibilities. And so we see them, again, from my perspective now as a grandmother and not just a literal grandmother, but a grandmother medicine energy, is the children coming in are remembering. They're remembering who they are at a different level, and not necessarily being told to forget in the same way.
Yeah. And isn't that beautiful? If, if that's the way, that's the new way, where we can just remember, keep that connection, and then build heaven on earth, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the stuff about Reiki research.
I'm like, wait, this is about Reiki research.
We can talk forever.
We can talk about these subjects for hours, Natalie.
Yeah.
So we will
definitely have to have you back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are some of both the big challenges of Reiki research? We've done a few interviews with Anne Baldwin. Actually, I've known her for quite a while, back into the days of some of the research in San Diego. And then what are some of the significant findings? How can people help? Go ahead. And and be sure to mention your conference.
Oh, I will. Yeah.
Reiki Research Conference.
I remember that. There are some challenges. So a lot of research happens in the healthcare setting. So a challenge there is having institutional support. So if you're setting up a study in a hospital, for example, you need to have what's called a physician champion, for example. So someone on the team, in the healthcare team, that's, pro Reiki, that helps set up the study, helps sign off on the IRB and all of that. So there's this need for like a good environment to run the study. A lot of people want to run research and they don't know where to do it. So connecting with someone who, a lot of nurses are definitely pro Reiki, but just connecting with a healthcare worker who is supportive of Reiki, or finding an integrative medicine center at a hospital and then saying, hey, do you think about doing a Reiki program? That's a good approach. But that is definitely a challenge, is institutional support. Another challenge is funding. Oh, goodness. A lot of the research right now, at least in North America, is privately funded. So there aren't very many big government grant funded Reiki research right now. It's been done, but it's not the norm. But we're working toward that. So we need to have really good preliminary data. We need to spend the time to create a grant for NIH, for example. And I believe it's coming. That time is coming. It's just, this is how it's been so far. So finding, the first study I did with the Center for Reiki Research was unfunded. It was a volunteer. I didn't get paid. A lot of that, a lot of the research I've done on the side has been like that. It's just, I want to do this study, and okay, I'll do it for free. Like, let's just make it happen. Finally, we're starting to get funding through private organizations, which is wonderful. Another challenge is appropriate control group. This is an ongoing conversation of, sham Reiki or no sham Reiki. Sham Reiki sometimes shows an effect. Well, what is sham Reiki? It's someone touching you. It's someone supporting you. It's someone being there, looking after you. So all of those, obviously, they show benefits. So there's lots of factors in there where just being cared for, having someone maybe just gently touch you, believing you're going to get a healing, those kinds of things, they matter. Real Reiki is more potent than that. But, oftentimes, it'll be like, oh, it's, hardly any difference compared to sham Reiki. So with acupuncture research, they stopped doing sham acupuncture because it's not inert, they say. It's like you're putting it on the meridian points and then you're putting it off, but people are still showing benefits. So they don't compare it to sham acupuncture anymore. They compare it to usual care. So what are you actually normally getting when you go to the hospital for whatever, or when you're getting a normal treatment? And then let's compare it to Reiki, for example. So in the healthcare setting, running a study with cancer patients receiving infusions. Normally they just sit there, they get their infusion. Maybe the nurse talks to them a bit. We compare that with having a Reiki person there. So it's a real world, actual, ecologically valid circumstance where what's actually happening in the real world. And yeah, we see incredible benefits from getting Reiki during an infusion, chemotherapy, for example, on fatigue, on anxiety, on pain. And that really, really matters. So there's there's a little bit of a debate on control groups there. You can also do an active control of something that you know is also effective. But again, you're comparing it to something that's effective, like massage. So you need to have another group. So like usual care, Reiki, and massage. Usual care, you always need to have that of like, what are they normally getting? So those are the biggest challenges, I think. I don't think I'm missing any. I'm probably missing a bunch of other challenges, but those are the main ones that come up. Funding, institutional support, control group, appropriate control, right population, that kind of thing, the usual sort of stuff. And connecting with a research team. There's a lot of practitioners that want to do research and they don't know where to start, so they can contact the Center for Reiki Research. That's us. We have studies coming up, and hopefully we can include some of the Reiki practitioners that have emailed us. But always, if you want to run a study and you have a really clear idea of what you want to do and you need some consulting, we can help with that as well. Significant area of research. So Reiki has definitely shown clear benefits for pain, anxiety, stress, fatigue, depression, these things. So very much psychological stuff, but also pain, and pain also is very psychological as well. But symptoms that people really struggle with across many, many different diseases. So it's very, very good for symptom management in that sense. And it's really helpful for cancer populations, palliative care patients, stressed populations, so healthcare workers, veterans, people with PTSD, trauma, this kind of stuff. Very, very useful for that. The conference. I don't know if I missed anything in there, but the Center for Reiki Research, we're hosting our second annual Reiki Research Conference. That's June 1st and 2nd, and it's a virtual conference. We might have it in person at some point, but we started it virtual and we're still doing it virtual this year. And this is where we have presenters presenting their most recent research. We'll have panel discussions on Reiki for cancer patients, for example, Reiki for mental health. We have some keynote speakers, Justin Stein, Helene Wabe, and it's going to be really, really great. And then we have a social at the end too. So if you're interested in networking with researchers or other people that are interested in research and you want to get some projects going, last year we made a lot of very fruitful connections, and we've done some collaborations and created some research out of that. So if you go to reikiresearch.org or the Center for reikiresearch.com, either one, you'll find information there about the conference. So it's going to be June 1st and 2nd, and should be a lot of fun. We also have some experiential sessions too. So some Reiki shares and Reiki drumming, and it's a lot of fun.
Pauline, you're muted.
What kind of, are there current research studies going on right now? Are you working on something?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm just finishing up a study with cancer patients receiving infusions. So they were given just 30 minutes of Reiki by a volunteer in the hospital system in Ohio during their infusion. And we see incredible benefits in their pain, same measures I mentioned: pain, anxiety, fatigue, nausea as well. So we're in process of publishing that. We're also going to be starting another study with a cancer population as well, which we haven't gotten going yet. We just published at the end of last year a distance Reiki study with Reiki Medicare. They're out of the UK, and they have a wonderful program for healthcare professionals. So they can get free Reiki, any healthcare professional that's considered frontline. So nurses, doctors, paramedics, they get 4 sessions of Reiki. And we looked at these same measures of anxiety, pain, stress, incredible improvements, including in those that, they're stressed. So they're taking the chance on Reiki. They don't believe it. And they write, well, I didn't believe in this at all, but oh my gosh, my sinuses are clear. They haven't been clear in 10 years, things like that. So So we just published that, and we're looking to expand that with a randomized controlled design, not with a sham Reiki control, but with a placebo control. So because it's a distance study, it's a little easier to test a placebo effect, because you just say, okay, you may or may not be getting Reiki at this time, go lie down at this time. And whereas you don't have to have someone in person pretending to do Reiki. It's just offline, they go lie down. So we're going to see what comes of that. It's pretty exciting, but we're needing some funds. So we're going to be putting together a fundraising effort for that as well. Hopefully that the public would like to fund that. That would be wonderful. So if you sign up for the Center for Reiki Research newsletter by going to our site, you should get up to date on that and informed on that. If you wanted to help out, that would be wonderful. What else? We're hoping to do a study looking at so I have a theory that, it's not my theory, but that love is a very important part of the Reiki healing. So we're going to look at love as a mediating factor. So looking at the love of the practitioner, how much they're feeling during the session, and how that relates to the outcomes in the patient. So that's going to be pretty interesting. So if you're feeling a little more connected, a little more compassion, a little more love for the client, does that translate to a more powerful healing effect? Well, we're going to test that and see. And we have some studies. I'm not involved in this one, but the Center for Reiki Research is going to be running a study with cancer cells. So that's Patricia De Leon. She's on our board. She's going to be running a study with, I think they're breast cancer cells, looking at Reiki, and also having a controlled study there as well. So lots of exciting projects going on.
Oh, go ahead, Robin.
Well, I was just going to say that's exciting. All of it's exciting, but then that we're going to be able to also study, with your studying cells, it's a little bit less of the kind of anecdotal models, where you can see.
Exactly.
I know for so many of us, we know we've experienced Reiki, right? So we know. And so the anecdotal models it's like, well, yes. And I know they're really important too, but for kind of a mainstream acceptance, like that we can maybe study some of those kinds of things as well, that's exciting that we have people
much more powerful for the skeptic. Yeah. Because, I keep repeating these like, pain, anxiety, it all improves. We know it improves, and we keep doing studies showing it improves, but it would be really great to, at the cellular level, because the cells presumably don't know that you're faking Reiki or whatever.
That we know of at this point.
I know, presumably. I don't know. Who knows?
For people that are listening, I'm curious on your take about how science explains Reiki. I know that we've heard and read different ways, but I'm also curious on your take, Natalie, because you do blend the spiritual aspects and the science aspects in your practice, and how you talk about it. So I'm curious on kind of both perspectives with that.
So at the very, the most conservative perspective, if I'm speaking to a materialist, I would say it induces the relaxation response. So it's obviously relaxing when we study. Obviously, it's reducing stress and anxiety, but qualitative reports too, the number one thing people say is, oh, so relaxed, oh, so deeply relaxed and calm. I've never been so relaxed. So what we think is happening is it's shifting us, or we're pretty sure it's shifting us from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state, which is when the body heals. So we need to be in that rest and digest rather than the fight or flight, so that we can repair our tissues, our wounds. All of that is required. So eliciting that relaxation response. And what we also see with that is a reduction in inflammation. And inflammation is the basis of almost all disease. So that core right there is going to fix, or, help so many different chronic diseases and health conditions just from reducing inflammation, from increasing relaxation. We know that stress, exacerbates pretty much every chronic health issue as well. So on the other side, Reiki does the opposite. Then you can get into things like, okay, the experience of Reiki is really interesting. People have, visions, spiritual experiences, insights. So something within that deep relaxation is putting them into a certain state. It's kind of like the hypnagogic state, like in between sleep and wake. So some people are like, I feel like I slept, but I know I didn't sleep. And I saw all these wonderful things and I got all these insights. And so our brain is going into this state that's sort of between wake and sleep. And it's a very valuable state where you can relax, rest, rejuvenate, but also receive information that's not normally accessible. So there's a lot of value in the Reiki experience from those insights. So like I see that with clients, like, oh my gosh, someone visited me, or I just understood something about myself that I didn't before. And so something shifts there, putting the client or patient into a state where they can receive clarity on things and creativity. And that's very, very interesting. And then when we think of, it gets a little different when we think of distance Reiki. Then do we need to bring in quantum mechanics? Maybe. Entanglement, these kinds of things. We're all connected. Space is kind of an illusion. Time is kind of an illusion. We're all one. I just read a book on quantum physics. Forget the author, which is terrible, but his whole conclusion, he's not spiritual, but his whole conclusion is there's only one particle, and it's just doing all these. Yeah, there's only one particle. So hello.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, we're just
possibilities.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So
that's a fascinating thought. Wow.
yeah. Right. There's only one point, and it's all just perception, perceived time, perceived space, but really it's one at a very, very deep level. And the guy's not spiritual, but that's okay.
That's really fascinating. I always think of that about our microbiome, like that all of the billions of bacteria that's in our microbiome, it's like, do they have like a whole society down there? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So true.
Well, Natalie, we know that you have to go, right? Or is that where we're at, if I remember correctly? Yeah. Okay. So real life Reiki, she has a 1-year-old and has childcare things to consider. So I just wanted to go ahead and share your information again. You can find Natalie at drnataliedyer.com, and then her Instagram is dr.natalie.dyer.com. I'm sorry, at dr.natalie.dyer. And then the Center for Reiki Research, you can find them at centerforreikiresearch.com. They're on Facebook, and they have that conference coming up on June 1st and 2nd, and you can find everything about it at centerforreikiresearch.com. Did I get all the information in there that we need? Yeah. And then your book that you talked about is coming out in September, right? Or October?
Mm-hmm.
September.
Yep. Infinite Perception. The role of psychedelics for global transformation. And my co-editor is Ocean Melandra. Very amazing voices from the Amazon to the Arctic Circle, scientists, anthropologists, a huge multidisciplinary take on psychedelics. So
cannot wait. Well, we'll have you back on to talk about that.
Great.
Closer when it's coming on.
Great.
Well, we could talk for such a long time. There's so many things to talk about. So I can't wait, because I even want to know what post-materialist paradigm is. Your other book, Expanding Science, Visions of a Post-Materialist Paradigm. And there's that one. Yes. We want to know about it too.
Yeah, and this is, again, it's an anthology with scientists going through all kinds of topics related to what we call post-materialist science. So that's things like near-death experiences, energy healing as well, children who remember past lives, and the evidence for that. So we can shift from an outdated materialist paradigm to a post-materialist paradigm. So also very interesting stuff.
I like that term.
And then you also have the Beacon of Mind.
I wrote a chapter in that book. That's another great collection of voices on the need for balancing intuition and logic, which is really important to be grounded in that, right? Like we don't want to just be out in space, and we don't want to be super logical. So the importance of balancing those two sides.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Natalie, if you want to hold on for just a moment, we'll go ahead and say bye to the audience. As always, thank you all so much for listening. You can find us at reikilifestyle.com.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.